Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football with myself, Scott Morganmouth, the Motor City Madmouth, and Ryan Skullroot, and Rick Curti. How about that, guys? We got the R&R and the Motor Mouth. Great to have you both on for the broadcast tonight.
It's nice to be on.
All right, Rick Curti, you're moving around the WSAN dial, and we'll make sure you get on all of them at some point, but now you made your first plunge into fantasy football with a guy you're all too familiar with through our channels here on social media. And Ryan, I guess even though it's not a baseball show, we're going to let you lead off with some of your top football notes, and we'll go into a bigger picture thereafter. How's that sound, Ryan?
Sounds great. So let's go ahead and kick it off since my website is really just starting to get back into the fantasy football work. One of the things that we realize that we are coming closer to an NFL season when we have news of an NFL running back wanting to hold out. We know that football is coming back soon. And so one of the things to look at is Dalvin Cook saying that, announcing yesterday that he does not want to report to any of the online team activities and will even not report to camp unless he and his representation can get a reasonable deal. I think that was the actual reasonable deal from the Vikings. And while this isn't anything new, we hear this every year, whether it's been Ezekiel Elliott or anyone else. Last year the holdout was Melvin Gordon. So this isn't new. But one thing that is new this year is the way that the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement for the NFL and the NFLPA, are going to deal with players and their contracts. And so one thing about this is that with the old CBA, at the end of a player's deal, so I think Dalvin Cook was a second-round pick, so he's got a 4-year contract. He's going into his 4th year. At the end of his 4th year, on the old CBA, he could be franchise tagged. If he doesn't show up by a certain amount of time. I believe under the new CBA, if he skips camp, that would allow the Vikings to not add on an extra year to his or add on his year of service, and therefore after that 4th season, if he does show up, he could actually, instead of getting the franchise tag or being an unrestricted free agent, he could actually be listed as a restricted free agent, where the Vikings could then do a restricted free agent tag and sign him for $4 to $5 million instead of having to put on the franchise tag of we're probably going to be looking at $10 to $12 million. So that's one thing that we're looking at. I think that because of that could lead to the Vikings and Dalvin Cook getting a deal done sooner rather than later. I know that he's looking to probably want more than what David Johnson got in his $13 million a year in 2018 from the Cardinals. So he's now with the Texans, but he got that deal with the Cardinals. So I think for now, in terms of if you're doing a lot of the drafts that happen right now are going to be dynasty drafts where it's long term. I don't see a problem with drafting Dalvin Cook right now, or if it's going to be like one of those draft and forget it, just kind of and just let it go type of leagues. I don't see a problem with drafting him as long as you make sure that you draft Alexander Madison as a backup. But if you're going to do just a single season long league, this is obviously something you want to wait until like mid to late August to figure out and just kind of see how it plays out. But for right now, it's definitely interesting. Again, NFL is back because we have a running back holding out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Dalvin Cook in this.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Minnesota Vikings have been really patient with Dalvin Cook because I know he's had some injury issues as well. So I think I can understand their position of they're not quite ready to invest into bigger money until the guy can actually play a 16, 17 game season, and be able to survive the wear and tear. I mean, running backs, they have a short shelf life anyways. And I think, I understand both positions, but I kind of understand the Viking position just a a bit more. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings will pay. They've already proven that they'll do that with Kirk Cousins, and they gave him a 3-year deal. And I think they went ahead and worked out another deal, didn't they? Right? So they retained him for another couple of years, right, Ryan?
Yes, they do have Kirk Cousins for a couple more years. So but with Dalvin Cook, again, like you were saying with the short shelf life on running backs, I want to say the average shelf life of a running back is like 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's.
And so a lot of guys don't even make it past their rookie deal. So with the abilities that he has shown when he is healthy, I definitely think he is worth an extension. But with how some of these extended contracts for running backs have gone in the past, we'll see just how much the Vikings are willing to shell out for him. So,
Rick, what are your thoughts?
I wish these players would just finish up their contracts. They keep sitting out. They sign like 4 or 5 year contracts, and then after the 3rd or 4th year, they're like, I'm underpaid. You're not underpaid when you're in the NFL or anywhere else. You're making 6 figures to play a game. So I wish these players, especially these young players, would just finish up their contract and then show them what they have. But Dalvin Cook's been injured a lot. He's a great player, but he's been injured. So I can understand the Vikings position, and just because David Johnson got overpaid all this money by the Cardinals doesn't mean that another team is going to overpay.
Okay. All right, on to the next one. Ryan got Kyler Murray. You expect to be a top 5 quarterback in 2020?
Well, it's more of a question: can he finish as a top 5 quarterback in 2020? I personally, if you on our website, we have our fantasy rankings, our preliminary fantasy rankings up. I actually have Kyler Murray ranked the lowest of the six rankers on our website so far. I have him ranked as 6th. Everyone else has him as like 3rd or 4th. And I think one of the things that has boosted his value in many people's eyes is the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. And obviously that is going to boost any quarterback's numbers. But the one thing to kind of look at in terms of what he did last year, Kyler Murray did finish 7th overall in terms of quarterback scoring for fantasy football last year. However, if you look at a points per week basis, he actually finished 12th. I want to say, was it 12? Yeah, he finished 12th. He actually finished, in terms of a points per game basis, he finished behind Ryan Tannehill, who is in a run-first offense. And so that is definitely something to kind of look at. I know that Tannehill was able to really have some explosive plays with A.J. Brown. So that kind of helped some of those numbers. At the same time, being in a run-first offense where you have Derrick Henry, I think that allowed Tannehill to be more efficient than he was in Miami, where they never really had a running game. They just put it all on his shoulders. So I think that Murray has the potential to be in the top 5. If you look at obviously they got the addition of Hopkins. They also added Houston offensive tackle Josh Jones in the third round of the draft, and that's going to help out. The offensive line actually surprised, considering how bad they were in 2018, especially in run blocking. Managed this last year to actually be, I think, Pro Football Focus ranked them 22nd overall. And a lot of that was because their pass protection was that much better. And also because Kyler Murray, able to do what he can with his legs, kind of in the same vein as like a Russell Wilson, was able to avoid a few more sacks. And kind of build, and I think that helps build up the grading for the Cardinals offensive line. That being said, they were also 4th worst in terms of run blocking. I think the Rams were just behind them in terms of run blocking. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do, what that offensive line can do, if they can kind of cohese a little bit better, grow a little bit more. The other thing to look at is that Kyler Murray was responsible for a league-leading 23 of his own sacks. So you look at a guy like Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, they both get sacked a lot. also have pretty horrible offensive lines. I want to say the Seahawks offensive line finished 27th on Pro Football Focus's rankings. At the same time, most of their sacks are not their fault. It's actually the fault of the offensive line. Kyler Murray was responsible for 23 of his own sacks, and so it was his trying to extend the play farther than he should have more often. Now, again, you could put that on the fact that he's a rookie, which is completely understandable. I know that Russell Wilson, with his abilities, has created some of his own sacks in the process of his ability to move around. So I think that Kyler Murray will be better this year. I think that on a per week average, he will be better, especially considering they've added DeAndre Hopkins. They've got Larry Fitzgerald in the slot. They've got a lot of young, very solid wide receivers. So I think that he will still be a very solid quarterback, and could provide a decent amount of value depending on how low he goes. He's just one of those guys that I'm not going to rush to try to draft him as a quarterback in a standard league that only has one QB. So
now, Ryan, I know, and I watched actually all 3 days of the draft, that the Cardinals selected a hometown running back from Arizona State who's a speedster who can get, I don't remember the guy's name, but regardless, I know they're trying to find another running back. Of course, they let Johnson go away. Even if they're able to discover another running back here during the offseason, do you think that there's any chance that their run game will be as efficient, knowing that, obviously, I think they let David Johnson go probably at the right time, let alone unloaded that contract. But do you see any good running backs with the Arizona Cardinals that will give Kyler Murray some help in the backfield?
Well, they do still have Kenny Drake. And Kenny Drake, again, he's a very solid runner. He provided a decent little boost to that offense. But at the same time, while his average points per game was better than, I believe it was better than David Johnson's. At the same time, most of that came out of like 2 or 3 games. He had one game, I want to say that he had 3 or 4 touchdowns, receiving and running. He had another game where he had, I want to say 150 yards and a couple of touchdowns. So most of his production came from 2 games where overall he was a solid runner, solid producer, but his numbers exploded a little bit because of some outlying games. Now, I think that Kenny Drake will be a solid contributor this year, and a lot of that's because of the fact that he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So I think he's still, because of being an outlet for Kyler Murray in the passing game, I think that Kenny Drake will still be a solid runner and could help with the quote-unquote running game. But in terms of more like the New England Patriots version of a running game, where the running game is short dump-off passes to the slot and to running backs, like Julian Edelman and White, kind of a thing. So I think that's more of how they're going to use their running game, because their offensive line proved that they just could not block very well in the run game.
All right, Rick, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not really sold on Kyler Murray. I totally agree with Ryan. I wouldn't have him that high. I think his height is an issue. I'm not really sold on Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know how you could get rid of a coach after one season and get a coach that was under 500 in college. We'll see what happens with DeAndre Hopkins. That was like the steal of the century with that trade. I still can't figure out what Bill O'Brien was thinking about with DeAndre Hopkins. Now more and more comes out. There's more personal issues, and I don't blame DeAndre for wanting to get out of there. It seemed like it was a toxic environment for him. So we'll see what happens with him. But I have to see more of Kyler Murray, and there's always that sophomore slump. So now they pre-gamed, and now they see what they have with him, and you always have those kind of issues during your sophomore season, sort of like a Baker Mayfield. So we'll see what happens with him. I'm still not sold on him though.
Good points, Rick. Very good points. All right, Ryan, you have one more football note, then we're going to go on to some other things. So was it 2019 where we saw the real Austin Eckler?
Yes and no. And here's the thing. Austin Eckler I think that he's a phenomenal running back, or let me rephrase. I think he's a phenomenal NFL player. I think that his value, though, is more in the passing game. Again, more like a James White in New England than it is in the actual running game. His running this past year was better in terms of running between the tackles. I think they were able to utilize him in a combination of Melvin Gordon better. But again, a lot of Austin Eckler's value came in the passing game, especially in fantasy for like half point and full point PPR leagues. Now our standard judgment in terms of SkullKing Sports, when we're doing our rankings, we use a half point PPR system in order to develop our rankings. And in 2019, Austin Eckler ended up finishing fifth for running backs, sixth in points per week. So he really stayed very, very consistent overall for the entire year. And I want to say he exploded the first 3 weeks. He finished with like 22 points per game the first 3 weeks. Now after that, he dropped off. I want to say from then on, from week 4, once Melvin Gordon came back from his holdout till the end of the season, he averaged right around 15 points per game. And I think at the end of the season, it ended up coming down to like 16-5. I think it was his total for the season in terms of points per game, which is, again, for a running back whose main ability is to catch the ball out of the backfield, that's a really, really solid year. And so I think that it's possible that he can do that again this year. The problem is he now no longer has Phillip Rivers, who has always been his biggest ally in terms of his production on the field. Phillip Rivers has loved throwing to running backs. I mean, you look at the value that he's provided over the years to Austin Eckler, to Melvin Gordon, who was always known as like a downhill runner, but then once he got more involved in the passing game, Melvin Gordon became like a top 4, top 5 running back in the league when he stayed on the field and was healthy. You go back to Danny Whitehead, was a huge producer in terms of catching the ball out of the backfield. And so even Ryan Matthews, while mainly a downhill runner, was also able to catch the ball out of the backfield. And that was one of the big things that Phillip Rivers was able to help running back production for fantasy. Phillip Rivers is now with the Colts, and the Chargers are dealing with having a rookie quarterback. And it'll be interesting to see if Justin Herbert can be as running back friendly in the passing game. Now, it's possible, because he's a rookie, that he will more look to the running backs, the tight ends, for the dump-offs when pressure comes. It's very possible that's going to be the case. And that could provide the same type of value for the running backs and even for the tight ends going into this next year. That being said, because he's a rookie, is that necessarily, how much is that going to actually be possible? So I still think that Austin Eckler is probably being drafted a little bit too early in just kind of in basic looking at the average draft position in mock drafts right now that a lot of people are running, and really it's the mock drafts that help set average draft positions when you get into the season. So for right now, I think that Austin Eckler is going mid to late second round. I still think that's a little too early, just with some of the question marks about a rookie quarterback in Justin Herbert, or if it's not Justin Herbert and it's Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor is a terrible quarterback when it comes to helping provide production for the running backs in the passing game. And so I think that there's still enough question marks around Austin Eckler, not in his ability, but in the ability of those around him, that I would still hold off right now and kind of wait to see some preseason stuff with Justin Herbert to wait and see is he going to be worth as early of a pick as he is going right now.
Yeah, Ryan, I'll take a TBD on Austin Eckler because I have no information about the quarterback situation, if it's Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert. Rick, what are your thoughts about the Chargers' dilemma with the running back position, let alone the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of it had to do with Philip Rivers. I think because he's so passer friendly and things like that. I think that's what made all the other, like Austin Eckler, stand out a lot. And I think with Herbert or Taylor, they're going to struggle. So I don't think his numbers are there. So I would have to take a pass on him too. But I have to see what's going to happen in the preseason. But because you have a rookie quarterback and you have another quarterback who's really is has some issues with passing or or throwing the ball, I'm going to have to take a pass on Austin Eckler because I'm not very confident in both those quarterbacks.
All right, with that said, we're going to transition from football over to Ryan Skullrude as a new brand. And Ryan, why don't you go ahead and educate the fans about what it really is?
All right, well, for the last 5 years, SkullKing has been SkullKing football, and our main focus over the last 5 years was fantasy football advice. And so for the first 5 years of our website, fantasy football advice is what we did. It was the only thing that we did. And when the COVID-19 shutdown hit, we decided that we wanted to take that time to try to expand a little bit. People were desperate for sports when everything was shut down. I mean, the amount of replays of old NASCAR and Formula One races, replays of sports games on ESPN and their entire network. People were desperate; they wanted sports, and so what we decided was we'd had a dream from the beginning to eventually move from just football to cover as many sports as possible. So we have actually officially made that transition. So we are no longer SkullKing football. As of right about, I want to say the week before the NFL draft, we officially transitioned over to SkullKing Sports. And so our new website, SkullKingSports.com, we now cover NFL, so we cover fantasy football still, but we also have writers that cover individual teams. So we have team blogs on there. We have fantasy football advice. Our fantasy football rankings still. We've also moved into Major League Baseball. We have a few baseball writers covering teams. We're working on getting a couple NBA writers. We have a couple NHL writers, which will really be helpful since we're moving into the playoffs, where it looks like the NBA and the NHL are actually going to be able to move forward with what they're doing with their playoffs. We're also covering racing, so we cover NASCAR, Formula One, and IndyCar. Currently, because we don't necessarily have a NASCAR and IndyCar writer, I'm covering both of those. We do have a Formula One writer who's been really, really on top of a lot of the moves with drivers in that field. We cover UFC. And starting this week, we are moving into golf as well with the Charles Schwab Cup starting up this weekend. So we have moved beyond just fantasy football, and so we're going full tilt into everything and just trying to explode the brand as best we can.
Yeah, what I'm going to do too is start passing on some IMSA, and I think when you find out what endurance racing is like and the drivers that are involved, I think you'll be impressed with what I'm going to send you with IMSA. They've been a good partner here with the company, the Tribune, since we started. And we enjoy getting their releases. And let me tell you, when you get into these endurance races, they're unbelievable. Rick, any thoughts about what Ryan's doing?
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's a great idea to, just not to transition from one sport, but to do all sports, especially right now with this COVID-19. We have no idea what's going to happen, whether we're going to have a football season or anything else. So I think it's awesome that you're expanding, and I applaud you, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, Ryan, I'll tell you what. And now I guess we might have to change the complexity of this broadcast, and maybe we'll have to divide some of it on fantasy football, or we might have to do another night, depending on your availability here at the WSAN Network and the South Florida Tribune. We've been partners since we got this operation off the ground, and any way that we can go ahead and build your brand and we can do it simultaneously, there's nothing wrong with that, right, pal?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and our philosophy at the Tribune here is to promote colleges and pro sports and as well as our non-sports related program. But Ryan, I think that's a really great move on your part, and we obviously are happy to be partners with SkullKing Sports, and obviously we're delighted that we work towards making it a long-term one. So with that said, why don't you transition over to some of the articles on your website?
Well, one of the things that we've looked at and we've covered that I do daily rundowns of the sports, biggest sports news of the day. And one of the things we talked about today on my little broadcast was NASCAR moving to, which we're looking to get an article up actually officially about this tomorrow. Is NASCAR is actually now going to be allowing guests into the races. They're not doing that starting this week, or not starting Wednesday, which would be tomorrow with the Martinsville race. Martinsville. What they're actually going to do is they're going to start on Saturday with I believe it's one of the races on Saturday. They're going to allow actual guests in at the races. Now, there's a caveat on that. They're going to limit the amount of people that come in, and we're not yet sure about what the percentage of full stands, what the percentage of capacity they're looking at. But they're going to be scanning every guest as they come in. I believe scanning for temperature. They're going to be also requiring face coverings, and they're going to be having ushers who are mandating a 6-foot social distancing policy. And then on top of that, they're not letting the guests in on the infield. So it's going to prevent guests will be able to come in and see and watch the race, but they won't be able to get down close to the racers. So it's still keeping the racers and the pit crews and the teams all isolated, which obviously that's a good thing. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out. They've worked on this whole policy with medical experts, with the local, state, and national governments, the federal agencies to get this whole process written up and solidified and approved. And so it'll definitely be interesting to see how it goes. I want to say they're starting Sunday the 14th with a race at Miami, and then it will also be the next week, the 21st, at the Talladega Speedway. So definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting to think about. They're just now getting back to having fans in the stands at sporting events.
So how do you like the way NASCAR's handled things? They had no fans, they have remote announcers. I think they've actually done absolutely fantastic with the way they brought their sport back, because we know that's a sport that depends on their TV money. And of course, as you bring more and more fans in, and then the remote announcers. What are your thoughts about the remote announcers, and what have you heard about them?
Well, the remote announcers haven't been bad. I actually, during some of the races, have listened into the streams on the NASCAR app so that I can, kind of be covering what's going on with those. They've actually been great from what I've been able to tell as I've been watching. The coverage has been great, and I would agree with you. NASCAR has been phenomenal in terms of what they've done with getting their sport back up. I want to say it was. I think it was either Kevin Harvick or Brad Keselowski after one of the races, after one of the wins that they had. They were talking about how really NASCAR has really created something over these last few weeks coming back that could be a model for maybe NASCAR moving forward, having midweek races, having less practice time. Obviously, it's caused a few more bumps and bruises in some of the cars. It's caused more excitement for the fans getting towards the end of some of these races. As we've had some wrecks and some things, especially with the short track in Bristol. How basically one of the articles I wrote on was how basically like bumper cars with how many wrecks and how many restarts they had to have at Bristol. But it's a short track. It's barely over a half a mile. So if one of those tracks, there's not a whole lot of room, and with a lot less practice time, it's going to cause those kind of issues. So I definitely think that NASCAR has done a great job in bringing their sport back, and we'll see how they kind of model this, if they do model it, moving on towards towards into next season and everything.
Well, I got to tell you, I've been to Bristol. I actually went took a couple laps with a friend of mine, for a Christmas thing, 2 laps. And I'm going to tell you, that track is banked like you wouldn't believe. But it's a beautiful area in the mountains of Tennessee. Rick, what are your thoughts about this?
I think it's amazing. I think NASCAR has done a sensational job in trying to get their fans back and to play the games, and maybe Major League Baseball will learn a lesson from them to put the fans first and stop squabbling about how much money you're going to lose. So I think my only concern is having fans. I think it's just a little too soon, but they're making all the right steps by taking temperatures, and we'll see how many people they allow. I still think it's too risky to have fans, but I think overall NASCAR has done a really great job bringing the sport back during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, no question about it. So, Ryan, we'll talk about remote announcers for a while. I know that MLB should it come back, and now it's becoming doubtful by the moment. They're talking about making sure a lot of the announcers are remote when they're doing road games. Do you think that remote announcers could be a potential thing of the future where announcers don't travel, or is it just this year only? Because I know that my networking groups have become virtual, but I'm just curious about that.
I honestly think I don't see a problem with the remote announcers. I don't know for those who follow Thursday night football during the season, with Amazon having some of their exclusive rights to Thursday night football and airing that online and being able to stream that online. They already have already been doing this a little bit. Because Amazon has as part of their stream, you can listen to it in English, you can listen to it in Spanish, and then they also have the female announcers who are doing the game as another broadcast on there. And they are not at the game; they're actually watching the feed of the game and doing it remotely, anyways. So this is something that Amazon has already been working on. So. I've followed those streams a couple of times, and it has been pretty flawless overall. So I don't see an issue moving forward with moving to some remote announcers during sporting events. I understand there's always going to be a little bit of a delay just because satellite signals and signals through cords and wires and everything. There's always it takes a certain amount of time for that to happen, even though it seems almost instantaneous. That being said, the way that internet companies and internet technology has been advancing, it's getting faster and faster. And because of that, I think that I don't think it would be the norm, but I think that it's very feasible and possible for it to be an easy backup plan for sports to do remote announcers.
Well, let me tell you something before we go on to the next subject. I remember years ago, NBC made they took a gamble. It didn't hurt anything. They had an announcerless game, and Brian Gumbel was your halftime guy. And it was the Dolphins, I believe, and the Jets at the Orange Bowl. I can't remember. I'm almost sure it was them. It's safe to say that was a one and done. But, I got to give him credit for making a move like that when you have an announcerless game anyways. To try it. I mean, it doesn't hurt to experiment. We're all going to try something. If it works, it works. So, but I think it's been pretty good. Rick, what are your thoughts?
I think it's great. I mean, they have to do something. I mean, they can't have people crowded in the booths, and I think doing it is great. I've been watching some of the games with them doing the announcing like that. I think it's great. I actually think it'll lead to something in the future. I don't think this is because of the pandemic. I think this could be something that could change sports and announcing. So I think it's a great idea. Instead of someone, they don't have to be at the studio. They can just do it from whether they're at their house or whether they're in another country or somebody else. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think the only thing to wonder about is the pre-production and the interaction with the drivers, or let alone any athlete. But it's good to talk about. Ryan, you have one or two more topics you want to go over with?
Yeah, honestly, the one more topic I was going to go over with is again in the vein of racing. One of the things that has been coming up a lot. I know that this is something we've been dealing about with MLB and with the NFL and everyone with contract disputes. And in MLB you have guaranteed contracts basically, which is not something that you have in the NFL. You have certain amounts that are guaranteed. You can negotiate to have your full contract guaranteed. But looking at yearly contracts of sports here in the United States, you don't have I want to say the highest paid quarterback is Russell Wilson, making about 39 a year or something like that, 39 million a year. In Formula One, with how their pricing structure has gone, they have next year basically introduced the equivalent of an NFL salary cap in terms of what they can do for their teams. So in Formula One, just kind of as a background, they basically had what you could consider a Major League Baseball salary system for the design and development of their cars. So because of that, you have some teams that they call back-end teams or back-marker teams that just don't have the money to spend, where their yearly budget is around, I want to say about 100 to 110 million on design and development of their Formula One cars. Where you have teams like Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull, the top three teams for the last probably 10 years. Those three teams are spending between 350 and 400 million in the design and development of their race cars. Wow. Starting next year, they are moving to a quote-unquote salary cap of 175 million in terms of the design and development. So bringing it down a lot closer. Well, with the shortened season this year, they've moved it from 175 down to 130 million. So it's really bringing some of those back-end teams a lot closer in terms of what they're able to do compared to other teams for development. Now, going with that, because they've already started that train, it looks like they may look at doing the same thing with driver salaries. You have a couple of the number one driver in the world, Lewis Hamilton, makes about $40 million a year just in salary. And he's basically right now the Tiger Woods of Formula One, having won 6 of the last 7 Formula One championships, drivers' championships. So there are a lot of younger drivers who have signed bigger contracts, that once those contracts are over, if they move to a salary cap type system in terms of how much you can actually pay your drivers, again, that's going to help the lower teams be able to bring in drivers that are, more than just seat fillers. Because of that, it's causing a lot of trouble and kind of dispute between the drivers and the manufacturers in terms of what's going to happen with salaries moving forward.
Now, Ryan, we've talked a little bit about motorsports, and Rick, you can chime in anytime you want. But I read recently that Roger Penske, the new owner of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, how does that sound since he owned the track as a car owner, let alone with his teams, is actually kicking around the idea of bringing fans into the stands over at Indy. Do you think that's realistic, or is it a pipe dream at this point? And what are your thoughts about Roger Penske owning the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
Sorry, bringing what into? You cut out for a second. Bringing what into Indianapolis?
He's thinking about bringing in fans, hopefully by the end of summer for the Indy 500. He's kicking the tires on it.
Well, I think it's possible. NASCAR is already looking at kind of their what they've been doing with it. I'm sure that they basically created the model for what other leagues, especially IndyCar, is going to do with fans. I know that in Formula One, it's been interesting. They're running without fans for the first few races in Austria, Belgium, and England for the first 5 races, first 5 weeks. So, but I think that this could provide, based on the state that they're in, the regulations, and again, making sure that you're scanning. It seems like a hassle, but scanning people's foreheads going in, scanning them, making sure they're not showing symptoms. Dealing with face masks, social distancing as much as you can mandate as possible. I think it's fully possible by the end of the summer that you could have at least some fans at the Indy 500.
Well, what are your thoughts about Roger Penske owning the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
Well, I mean, it's. I don't have much of an issue with it. I think it's definitely a plus for him. I don't think it necessarily does, in terms of what I know right now for Indianapolis, what it does so much for maybe the Penske teams or anything like that. But it could be that it could be possible for him, if he wants to, in order to bring in more revenue, see if he can bring in some other racing leagues. I know that Formula One at one point actually did a race at Indianapolis. I think they actually used the street track at Indianapolis, which could be. I know that the United States is looking to try to get more involved in Formula One. And with Penske, if he could partner with that, I think it would be possible for them to bring a Formula One race to the street track in Indianapolis. Liberty Media, who actually owns the league of Formula One, is actually an American company, and so it'll be interesting. I would love to see Formula One come to Indianapolis. I think that would just be a bigger boon for what they could do, and I think that if Penske really wants to be involved with that, I think that could be huge, not only for F1 as a sport in the United States, but for racing fans in general in the United States, and then also for the bottom line for Roger Penske to put a few more bucks in his pocket.
Well, years ago, I met Roger Penske at the Michigan International Speedway, and he's just the most remarkable person I've ever met, especially in motorsports. Rick, what are your thoughts about all of this?
I think it's very interesting. I think, you got to bring in fans, why not? And get Roger Penske involved in it, I think it'd be intriguing. I think it'd be interesting to see what happens. But my concern is with bringing fans. Just make sure we do it safely and not rush into any of this stuff, because we don't want a whole other cycle pandemic happening. So that's always been my concern about fans and about how many fans you're going to let in. But having Roger Penske involved, I think it's great. Why not?
Yeah, he's the most amazing man on the planet. Anything Roger Penske touches turns to gold. But that said, okay, I wish we could name the broadcast Fantasy Sports with Scott Ryan Storeroom, but we're a little too deep into the process with our main carrier Spreaker, but we'll definitely have some ideas how to promote it down the road. So with that said, Rick, why don't you promote who you're with? You guys have any closing thoughts, or you're okay with what we've talked about tonight?
I'm good so far.
Okay, what about you, Rick? Anything you want to add to it?
Oh, yeah, I was wondering, what do you think about Baker Mayfield and your fantasy sports? Should I pass on him?
Depends on how late he's going. I think, honestly, Baker Mayfield's going to be one of these, again, because of how much of a down season was last year. I think that Baker Mayfield is going to fall down in drafts. He's going to be one of those guys that you'll be able to get outside of the top 10 quarterbacks. I think he'll probably be 12th, 13th. I know that he's got a lot of talent around him. We saw the issues that they had last year with the head coach and just unable to keep a whole lot of discipline within the locker room. So I think that he's one of those guys. If you're solid enough with the rest of your team and you're willing to take a flyer on a quarterback, I think that he would be a solid choice. But I think there are definitely better quarterbacks to go for that you could get, and not have to draft much earlier, and still get solid production. So.
Okay, folks, you're listening to Fantasy Football with Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City, Manmouth, and Ryan Storeroom. And joining us tonight is Rick Curti. Rick, get used to being on this show. A feeling you're going to be coming back more often. Glad you guys are getting to know each other tonight. We have a lot of work to do together. With that said, okay, we're going to go to a baseball analogy and lead off, Rick, in terms of how people get a hold of you.
You can contact me through our website at www.charlottebats.com. We're on Facebook at Charlotte MLB. We're also on Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curti. I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Bats, and I'm also on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball. And you can contact me through any of those venues. And if you have any comments or questions, our email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. That's cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
Yeah, Rick Curti, is a most valuable player because he shifts from every broadcast I put him on, and he does very well. I'm proud of the progress Rick has made. With that said, Ryan, you're next.
All right. Well, they can get everyone can get a hold of me. I am on LinkedIn. My name is Ryan Skullrood. You can get a hold of us on Facebook at SkullKing or SkullKing Sports. We also have a group where it's not just our page. We also have a group where you can actually get involved in the conversation, post to the group, ask questions. That's SkullKing Sports Talk. We're on Twitter at SkullKing Sports. On Instagram at SkullKing Sports. And you can also follow our YouTube channel, which is, I believe, still under SkullKing Football. We're in the process of changing that over. So yeah, that's where you can get a hold of us.
Okay, and I guess I'm the last one to talk about it. So, using my Canadian accent, so for all you Canadian listeners, I know the accent at least. Anyways, you can reach us on Twitter at Tribune South. Facebook, follow the page at South Florida Tribune. Instagram, South Florida Tribune Gets It Done. I do have a YouTube channel as well. That's South Florida Tribune. The website is www.southfloridatribune.com. You can find all the content and broadcast there. Email South Florida Tribune, you guess it, at gmail.com. And I can be reached on LinkedIn. Scott Morgenroth is my name. You can find this broadcast at www.southfloridatribune.com or wherever you get your podcast. And you are listening to it on the WSAN network, which stands for World Sports and News Network. Some of the other shows that we have on the network include Sports Exchange, South Florida Tribune Podcast, which is mainly a non-sports type of program. We're doing quite well with 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Rick Curti and I will be having a future broadcast on that, talking about Korean baseball, the real and the rare, and nobody knows them better than you, Xavier McKnight, right, Ryan? So the X-Men, how about the X-Man? He's been a part of our team for a long time, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
Yeah, and of course, fantasy football with myself and you, and Motorman and Rude Dog. Everybody knows about Rude Dog. If you don't, you'll get to know him. I think you probably know him somewhere along the lines, Ryan. And I know Rick Cass, and of course our brand new broadcast, which I'm looking forward to taking to some incredible heights. There's no limits, and that will appear on Wednesday nights here on the network. So on behalf of Ryan Skullrood and Rick Curti, this is Scott Morgenroth of Motor City Madmouth, thanking you for joining us. We hope we provide you with some good entertainment and diversion of what you're doing. We ask that everybody don't take what's going on for granted. Please stay safe and protest safely. And hopefully at some point we'll be able to make some sense out of all this. But we appreciate you joining us with tonight here on Fantasy Football with myself and Ryan Skullrood. And Rick, thanks for being on the broadcast. Did a really good job. So meanwhile, good night, everybody.